Hi, everyone, and welcome to Stack Your Own Deck. I'm the co-host of the show, Neil Haley, with my host, Larry Bradley. And Larry, how are you? And I'm excited to chat with you today again about so many great nuggets. I recommend all of our listeners and viewers to go ahead and pay attention, listen, and really understand how important this information is for your health and your happiness.
Hi, Neil. I am doing great today. Looking forward to today's show and sharing some more really good information for folks. Again, in the line of Stack Your Own Deck, all about better health, wealth, and happiness.
All right. Today, Larry, you're going to talk a lot about self-esteem, exactly what it is and why does it matter.
Right. So if you, Neil, go back to one of the basic premise we talked around with health, one of the major causes of illness in America, in fact, the number one cause of illness in America, according to the Centers for Disease Control, is stress. And there's a lot of ailing people out there. And this notion of self-esteem, which we've talked about forever, I know to a lot of people feels worn out, to a lot of people feels even cliche. But I will tell you, let's start with how important is it really? And I'm just going to kind of give you a quick overview of the importance of self-esteem in all of us. And then I'm going to go backwards and define it more clearly, and we can continue the conversation. But
sure,
self-esteem is going to affect every single aspect of our lives. It's going to decide our level of education, what we'll study, what job we may have, where we'll work, how much we'll achieve in life, how much money we'll make, where we live, how we live, if we'll marry, who we'll marry, if we have kids, how many, how will we raise them, the house we live in, the car we drive, and on and on. There's nothing in our lives, in humanity, that's not affected positively or negatively by our self-esteem. Self-esteem is very simple, right? It's the best definition I've ever heard of self-esteem was by Dr. Nathaniel Branden, who said it's essentially our reputation with ourselves. We know what the word self means. The word esteem means basically respect. How much do we value and respect ourselves? And let me underscore this, because I think this has a lot to do with the addiction problem in America too,
right,
especially today. And that is a severe lack of self-worthiness or self-esteem. I have this basic belief that human beings will not do harm to anything that they value. And that includes themselves. So when you look at a person who is involved in damaging behaviors or habits, irrespective of what they may be, but they've caused them to be in declining health and perhaps even danger or death, that's a person, I will tell you 100% of the time, this has low self-esteem.
right.
So I want to push aside the cliche and say how critically important it really is. It is our reputation with ourselves.
It's definitely the reputation with ourselves, because if we feel that we're not worthy, if we feel we can't accomplish things, if we feel down on ourselves that why aren't we like other people, we're not going to be able to attain the goals we want to attain in life.
Absolutely. Important distinction here too, Neil, and that's a big part of the problem. There's a couple myths out there, and here they go, that I want to debunk right now. One is that the other guy or gal has it all figured out. You know, you look at social media today, and it's like many people are portraying that they're living in Camelot. Let me assure you, they're not.
Yes.
And I think we all know that, right? No one has it all figured out. I don't care how put together or together they seem to you or me. They don't. They have their own issues. They have their own self-doubt. They have their own esteem problems. The other big myth that goes right beside this one is this issue of control. People think, like often in a marriage, people will think, I can control him or her to get them to be the person I want. That is a recipe for divorce. The only person we can control is ourselves. And I would maintain to you, that's a full-time job. And it's as any of us know that aren't exactly where we want to be in every aspect of our lives knows that's not easy to do. But forget the notion of controlling another person, and please forget the idea that the other guy or girl has it figured out. They don't.
That's so true, and they don't, and the many different levels, they don't have it figured out. And so I guess in a lot of ways, self-improvement is such a billion-dollar industry because people can't figure it out for themselves how to improve. So their search for other people to help them in that journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you go with this topic of self-esteem, that's one of the drivers early on in my career as I learned and yearned in the field of self-help, and I was ravenously consuming information. I found a lot of people out there, and I don't think they're ill-willed or meaning to necessarily do this, but what I found is a lot of people, there's a lot of hyperbole out there saying things like, well, you need to raise your self-esteem. Well, that's wonderful. You're telling me what I need to do, but almost no one would tell us, how do I do that? What's the formula? What are the steps? And I think that's largely missing. And even people that go, like you're saying, people that go in search of self-help often don't find it. They'll find a ton of information on what they need to do, but they won't find hardly any information on how do I do it? How do I get it done?
Because you got to sign up for the next seminar, Larry.
Exactly.
You have to sign up for the next part of the next cruise or whatever, right?
Or the series or whatever. And I certainly have done that quite a few times. Yes. Pardon me for laughing, but you're spot on with that one.
So what is the big thing you're such a huge fan of Dr. Nathaniel Branden? You talked and mentioned him, but why are you such a big fan?
Dr. Nathaniel Branden he passed several years back, more than several years back. But Nathaniel Branden, Dr. Branden was, at his time, he was the world's preeminent expert on self-esteem. Just as an aside, he was also a love interest of Ayn Rand from the Atlas Shrugged era and so forth. But yeah, and anyway, he was the world's foremost expert in this area of self-esteem, and he made it clear for me. He brought it home for me, and I became a raving fan and still am to this day. And basically, he explained it this way, and it finally made sense to me. After all those seminars and all those workshops and tapes and books and et cetera, et cetera, he said, look, it's very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. The self-esteem has two components. One component, the easier one, is competency. It's our ability to get through our daily lives, to do our jobs, to be with our families, to do the things we do on a day-to-day basis. And what I would explain there is a very basic thing of driving an automobile. None of us was born knowing how to drive an automobile, but we get to the right age, and what do? I'm going to tell you what we do. We follow a formula that I call I plus A equals R.
Okay.
I is information, A is action, E is a result. So let's go back to the basic competency of driving a car. It's a daily competency. We first get information from the state in the booklet. We get the rules of the road and how you drive and the speeds and stopping and starting, all that good stuff. So we get information. Then most of us will seek out a family member or a friend who already knows how to drive, or hire someone, a professional, and get in a car and actually drive the car. That's the A, action. So that information plus action equals R, result. Result, we get a driver's license. Some of us don't get it on the first try, just saying, but had some fun with that myself. But you see, I don't know how to fly an airplane as I'm speaking to you right now, but could I? Sure. Yeah. I could go study information, take lessons, action, and get certified a result. I'm flying an airplane. So competency, the first phase of self-esteem, is the easy one. Most people are competent to get through their daily lives. The trick here is the second phase, and Dr. Branden would say this is the tough one, and this is the one that goes deep in our humanity, and it's a feeling of worthiness. Am I worthy to have a good, or dare I say, great outcome in a circumstance, or a great job, or a great marriage, or, my God, a great life?
Right.
Am I truly deserving of that? And that's where he said most people would fall short.
Why is it they doubt so much? People doubt they can't attain that. That only certain people can attain those goals.
I believe, Neil, that it has to do with I call it generational parenting. And think about this. Parents tend to hand down their beliefs, their ideologies, their thought processes, their realities to their children. It's the way they were raised. It's the world they grew up in. It's how they represented things to themselves. And rarely does the average human frame their world or their life around gratitude, love, the powerful things, and what I'm grateful for and what I'm capable of. Most people's default setting is negative. It's around what I lack. Most people, if you talk to them, they'll speak in terms of what they don't have, not what they're grateful for or what they do have or what they're achieving. And I think this falls from generation to generation. I have a great story for you.
Okay.
You know that I travel a ton, and I was in the Atlanta airport between flights. And as I normally do, I would go into the bookshop and start to look at the different titles, and often pick up a book to read on the plane or whatever. And this day, I pick up a book by John Maxwell called How Successful People Think. I take the book up to the counter. There's a young African-American woman. She's pretty overweight. I'd say she's in her 20s. And next to her behind the counter is an elderly African-American woman. I'd put her in her 60s, give or take. The store's crowded. I'm checking out. I put the book down, and the young lady picks the book up. And she stares at it for just a moment. And then she looks up at me and she says to me, "Are you successful?" Remember, the book was How Successful People Think, John Maxwell. She says, "Are you successful?" I said, "Yes, I believe I am." She looked back at the book. She looked back at me and she said, "Do you make a lot of money?" I said, "Yes, I believe I do." And with that, her eyes sank for a moment, and she looked back up at me. And I thought this was very odd in a crowded store. And she said to me out loud, "I'll never be successful and I'll never make a lot of money." And my heart sank. And I paid for the book, and I started to walk out of the store. And Neil, I spun on a dime. I went back to that counter. I interrupted the next customer, and I looked at her in the eye, and her eyes sank. Another sign of poor self-esteem, by the way. Can't make eye contact.
Right.
And I said to her, "Are you a woman of faith?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Do you believe that you're a child of a king?" And she said, "Yes, I do." I said, "Do you believe that that king wants you to suffer and be poor and not be successful and not have abundance? Or do you believe that that king wants all and only the best for you in your life, for you to prosper and do well and live a fantastic life? Is that what your king wants for you?"
Yes.
And she started to bawl. Tears start streaming from her eyes. And she said, "Yes, I do believe that. I believe that."
Yeah.
So I went back, I left her crying. I grabbed the second copy of the book and I brought it over. I put it on the counter. I said, "I'm going to buy this book for you in exchange for your promise that you're going to read this book, every single word of it, and then you're going to act on it." I said, "Will you promise me that?" I said, "Do you get breaks?" She said, "I get 2 15-minute breaks and a half-hour lunch." I said, "Promise me you'll crack this book and you'll finish it." She said, "I promise." And with that, the older woman next to her said, "I promise you she'll read it, because when she's done with it, I'm going to read it." And I turned and I walked out of the store. But, Neil, as I walked to my plane that day, it struck me that, those weren't necessarily my words. That encounter was not necessarily a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence. Just like I believe there's a reason that the audience is listening to this today. There are no accidents. And I hope and I pray that the good Lord touched me that day to do what I did. And I think the Lord did it through me. I don't want to get too spiritual here, but I think there was a
Right.
reason that all that occurred, and maybe it makes an impact on her life. But that's the idea of this work, is to help people understand how to take their lives and move it to another level, and not just accept what's coming their way, whether it's from their parents or prior generations or whatever. That was a long answer, but I
That's
think
a
that
great,
story is
that's a
critical.
tremendous answer and a tremendous part of the story here on the Stack Your Own Deck radio show. And I just think that that's such an important part of what you bring to the table, Larry, is we're going to talk about specific things, but you tell a story, and that story gives people hope. And the thing I think about when we talk about self-esteem, and I know we're going down a different direction than you thought, but I think if you've learned when you work with me, I ask different questions than many interviewers have ever been interviewed before. I listen to the answer. But the next question I have is, why is it that people do have confidence, believe they're successful, once they hit that wall and they don't, and they end up not getting what they thought they would get out of that experience, they give up because of the people around them? Why is that? Because that's part of the self-esteem. If you have the belief you want to grow and you're going to increase, you're going to develop, you're not looking at everyone else, you're looking at yourself. But however, the people around you say, hey, that business failed, or hey, that business deal didn't close, you wasted your time, or look at you, you were trying to think this relationship would take you to the promised land and it didn't. How do you respond to those people so that you don't hear those naysayers in your head, so the next time you meet a next person, you might say, you're already in the back of your mind saying that person's not going to be a good connection?
Neil, I think that, first of all, self-esteem is an inside job. We don't rely on anything external or anyone external to increase or to help our self-esteem. So we don't need to, unfortunately, like you're saying, many people do measure their neighbor, their family member, their friends. And unfortunately, it's often those people closest to us that and that allegedly love us that have what I call fear of success. They have fear of your success. It's kind of the crabs in the barrel mentality. You got a bunch of crabs in the barrel and one tries to get out. They all grab them and pull them back. But who are you to stand out? Who are you to shine? You're not going anywhere. That's not going to work for you. You can't do that. You're just one of us. Our family was meant to be broke. Our family was meant to be overweight and heavy and obese, et cetera, et cetera. This is the kind of programming, if you remember, we talked before about self-talk,
Right,
and
exactly.
we get caught up into that. One of my biggest mentors on this planet is Les Brown. And Les Brown loved to say this, and it so impacted me early on with him. He said, you don't need anyone to co-sign your life. Now go live it. Go create what you want. Go get what you want. Now that's easier said than done, I agree, but there are processes we could begin. If I'm 100 pounds overweight, or if I'm dead broke, I didn't get there overnight. I'm not going to get out of there overnight. But there's a process to begin, and it starts, Neil, between our ears, with us, by us, and between ourselves.
Yes.
And I get that that's maybe not the easiest thing to do, but remember Les's words. You, I, none of us need anyone on this planet to co-sign our lives. He said it this way, too. He said, you took your first breath by yourself. You're going to take your last breath by yourself. And everything in between is up to you. And it's up to me. And people need to begin to understand that. People need to be inspired and encouraged, because this world is full of disenchantment and negativity and ugliness. And I mean, just look at the current political climate. This country's so upside down, it's sad.
Exactly.
And I think people need to take back control of the 6 inches between their ears. That is so, so critical.
So I'm going to take a step back. So while we talk about self-esteem, you talk, first of all, in the self-esteem conversation about identifying who you are, then also identifying specifically where do you want yourself to go? How are you going to help yourself attain those goals? Where is next in the self-esteem process?
Well, here's what we do now. By the way, it's fairly simple to test someone's self-esteem, and in the process, you can test your own. And the way we do that, this is just one way. And you've seen this, I've seen this. You see someone pay someone else a compliment, or I pay you a compliment, you pay me a compliment. You say,
right,
wow, Sally, that dress looks fabulous on you. and she says, "Oh, this rag, I bought it at the Goodwill." That's called throwing the compliment back. She threw it back at you because she didn't have the esteem level high enough to accept and just simply say, "Thank you," with a smile.
Exactly.
That's what a healthy self-esteem would do. So I would ask all of us, what do we do? What do I do when I get a compliment? Do I throw it back, or do I smile and say thank you and accept it? That's one thing. But again, Rome wasn't built in a day, Neil. So what I tell people is a process, and we've talked about this too before in prior shows, of chunking. So let's look at, I have people do a self-assessment to take a really good hard look at themselves, an honest look at themselves, just in and of themselves. They don't have to share it with anyone, not even me. But when you take a look at yourself and you ask yourself, where am I, who am I, and where do I really want to go with this life of mine? And what do I need to get me there? And I will tell you straight up, we need a high, healthy self-esteem if we want to achieve in our lifetime. I don't care what it is. I don't care what it is we want to achieve. So I have people, and I'm going to use myself again as an example so you'll see. I tell people chunk up. What's that mean? I say, find a thing or things that you want to achieve in your life. And I have many, right? We all do. Most of us do.
Exactly.
And I say, what I chunk up to, what is that one goal? I keep moving myself up to, what is that one goal that if achieved or when achieved will have the most dramatic impact on every other aspect of my life? Again, I'll use me. So I did this exercise with me, and I determined that absolute fitness would be my chunked up number one goal. Why? Because I knew that when I become perfectly fit, one, I'm going to be healthier. Two, I'm going to look good. I'm going to feel good. I'm going to have energy, boundless energy, so I'm going to become way more productive and get a lot more done. So you see how all that trickles down from just attacking one goal? And now, so I defined, and you remember from before, I said I had a certain weight, but I said I took it down to a pant size 34.
Right.
If I'm wearing a pant size 34, I'm rocking and rolling with my fitness, and I know it. So I'm not going to get there overnight because as I said, I didn't get overweight. I'm not 100 pounds overweight, but I was pretty significantly, I was obese, and I had to deal with that. And I knew I wasn't going to change it in a day. And I think that's important for the listener to understand. You don't have to eat the elephant at one sitting, no pun intended. If it's a weight loss goal, it's day by day. I tell people start slow and get little gains each day, every other day.
Exactly.
Just never give up. For example, you could start out just taking a 5-minute walk every day. You could end up running a marathon, Neil. You know what I'm talking about. Over time, you condition yourself. But if I said to you, you're going to run a marathon next week, you'd say, I'm out. I quit. I'm going to the bar. I can't do this. This is ridiculous. And I wouldn't blame you. But if I said, take a 5-minute walk and then get it up to 15 and get it up to 30, next thing you know, you're running for 30 minutes. You see what I'm saying? You progress. And each day you tuck away a little win, because that achievement, that win's going to feed your self-esteem to say, yes, I can. And I don't have to win this thing overnight. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think people need to understand that in their own minds. The smallest little gain, one push-up, celebrate it. It's huge, because it's going to lead to 100 or 200, wherever you want to take it.
That's amazing, and that's so true. Because you're going to identify basically, how to improve your self-esteem. Then you're going to set goals for yourself, because successful people are never satisfied where they're at. If you're already satisfied where you're at, you're never going to grow in life, and at one point you are going to be disappointed that you never took chances. Correct?
Absolutely, Neil. It's inherently human to progress. You're spot on. Because why do babies get up and walk? First they crawl, then they walk, and then they run. Why do they do that? It's inherently human to progress. We want to progress. And that's what we're seeing with people. And when we fail at it or we backslide, that's where you start to really damage the self-esteem, and you start to feel worthless instead of worthy. Like, oh, I just can't do this. It wasn't meant for me. Listen, if anyone can succeed, everyone can succeed. You look around the landscape of life, and look at successful people. The sad reality is, and again, I'll go back to my friend Les Brown. He said there's a lot of people. The most talented place on earth, he says, is the graveyard. There's tons of people under 6 feet under that would make Frank Sinatra sound like an amateur. But you know what? They didn't have the esteem to take them there. They died with their music still in them. And that's what we don't want anyone doing.
Absolutely. And I think that's the hardest thing is people say, well, you need to scale back. Well, you scale back at times in different things. But if you have a dream and a goal of something, don't let that dream disappear, because that really will hurt your self-esteem, won't it?
Absolutely. And what I find is, as I said, and I think you're alluding to, is that people backslide a little bit or even a lot. Let's say you're on a diet and you have that cheat day and you go crazy, and then you feel like, there's no use, and the next day you continue on. People need to be way more forgiving on themselves and understand, celebrate the smallest thing, because little things become big things. I have my son, and we talk about business, and he came to me one day. He was all lit up in his eyes, and he made his first online sale. And he said, Dad, I made $40 online today. And I said, okay. I high five, that's cool. And I didn't get it at first, but he looked at me and he said, Dad, do you understand what that means? I said, tell me. He said, if I can make 40, I can make 400,000. I can make 4 million. I said, you know what? He said, the needle is thread. I just need to do more of it. I said, wow, my kid's teaching me lessons. I love it. But
he's teaching a heck of a lot of lessons. Well, what's so great about this show is you're always offering a great free item, and people need to go back and catch up on Stack Your Own Decks episodes. They're available on many different places. You can Google and find the episodes, but in this episode, you're offering another thing for our listeners. So tell us about that.
I am, Neil. So I said earlier, I talked about how you can test someone's, even your own self-esteem, by analyzing how you receive a compliment. But we actually am offering a free Xray of one's self-esteem. So if the listeners want an Xray, a free Xray of their self-esteem, and I'll explain it in a second, they need to email win, W-I-N, at stackyourowndeck.com. Email win at stackyourowndeck.com and put in the subject line the word Xray. And when we get that, we're gonna do the Xray, and it's just an exercise that I'll put the listener through. It's very easy on their part. But then once I have what I need from them, and it's a little bit of writing, very little, we're going to send them back a report and tell them where they stand with their self-esteem. It's basically literally an X-ray of our self-esteem. It's a fun exercise, and boy, is it revealing about how we are. And Neil, if I may, I want to step back for just a second to something, because sure. I talk about a self-esteem setting. We all have one. And the thing is to determine, and that's what the X-ray is going to do. It's going to determine just where your setting is sitting right now, based on where you are and who you are. And what I mean by that is, and I do, in the house, you set your thermostat at 70. If it goes above 70 degrees, the air conditioner comes on and gets it back to 70. Otherwise, if it gets below 70, the heater will kick on, right? That's the same thing with human beings. How many times have you and I heard the story of someone we may even know that loses 100 pounds or more, only to turn around and gain it all back?
Right. We know many.
That's because, Neil, and again, back to the compliments and the test, when someone whose esteem is not at a level to accept and receive that new person 100 pounds lighter, and their whole world around them is complimenting them, saying, oh my God, you look fantastic, you look fabulous. And inside, if not outside, they're rejecting those compliments, and they become very uncomfortable because they don't have a esteem level to accept that new you, that beautiful, wonderful person that was inside all the time. So what do? They self-sabotage, and they bring the weight back because, you know what? That's where I was comfortable and I didn't get so much of this attention. It happens in sales all the time. A real estate salesperson can sell 10 houses a month or whatever, 5 houses a month forever. And 1 month, they just, boom, they sell 18 houses. And Neil, in study after study after study with salespeople, they find in the subsequent months to that big boom month, they'll backslide terrifically. to get them back to a level setting, like that 70 degree, like that heat, like that air, saying, no, I'm not comfortable selling 18. I sell 5 houses a month. Well, you need to become comfortable in your esteem level between your ears that says, yes, I am that woman that can sell 18 houses a month and kill it. And I'm worthy of that. And that's where this work takes us. That's what we like to teach and work with people to get their mindset to there.
And what is the most important advice on this topic for our audience?
Neil, I'll put this very simple. This is the most profound lesson I've learned in my entire life, in all the things I have done, and it's so relative to self-esteem and so many other aspects, but certainly in this topic. And it's simply this, and here again, it's not rocket science. It is this: think and speak always in terms of what you want to do, have, or be. Never, ever speak or think in terms of what you lack. Don't talk about being broke. Don't think about being broke. I don't care how broke you are. Don't talk about being sick or think about being sick. I don't care how sick you are. Talk about what you're grateful for and what you want to do, have, and be as if it was already yours. Own it, possess it, claim it. Don't give life to the negativity. And I know that's work, but you could do that. And there's a process too. And I say, like when I said my goal was 34-inch waist, I got 3x5 index cards, and the audience can do this. And I put 34 on a bunch of index cards. I put that on the refrigerator, on my car steering wheel, on my office desk, on my mirror, in my bathroom. Everywhere I went, I saw 34, 34, 30. It kept my mind conscious of what I want, not what I have or what I don't want. You see?
Exactly.
So
wow.
think in terms of what you want, speak in terms of what you want. That is profound advice that I learned a long time ago. It's helped me enormously.
All right. Best place we can find information is go stackyourowndeck.com. Also follow you on social media. And, Larry B. Wellness on Twitter, which is blowing up. You're almost at 3,000 followers. You got to thank all your followers on Twitter and how that you can really get a lot of valuable information. We're going to definitely start tweeting out on a regular basis that those 2 white papers that you offer our listeners on the Twitter account as well. Yep. It's a great way for people just to grab it and take care of it. So I appreciate you coming on, Larry, and I can't wait to what we talk about next month or next week or whenever.
Yeah. Neil, it's always a pleasure, and more videos coming too, by the way.
All right. Awesome, Larry. Take care. All right. See you.
Thank you.
You're
Bye-bye.
listening to Stack Your Own Deck, and we'll see you next time.